this is Nelson Muskin that made me bleed out, and this is Someone Like You by Sparky Pastor, Chapter 3. When he woke up in the morning, Izuku got onto his computer and started looking for a part-time job. He found one at a nearby cafe. He filled out the application online and then printed it out to take in. When Izuku walked into the cafe, he found a long counter stretching from one side of the building to another. A coder separating the register area from the pickup. At the opposite end of the counter from the register sat 3 counter seats. The cafe front from the wide window lined with 5 booths, so every customer sat there could watch the world pass by. It was after the morning rush, so the bartista, a young lady with an irregular haircut, short black hair, was cleaning the counters and the coffee machines. Izuku noticed she also had a mutation that causes her lobes of her arms to resemble Jack's on a set of headphones. "Hi, how can I help you?" she asked. "Hello, I have an application to turn in," Izuku responded. As if summoned, an older woman with gray hair secured below her neck came out of the doorway along the wall behind the counter. Izuku could only assume it led to a kitchen, based on the fact that there were pastries and small plates in the case, but no oven to be seen. The woman yanked the application out of Izuku's hands and looked over it. "Follow me," she said curtly. Izuku stepped past the swinging door, bolted to the counter, and followed the woman to the kitchen. Inside, Izuku saw a priceless kitchen with shiny countertops and appliances. The woman, who Izuku assumed was either the owner or the manager or both, walked to the other door located near the back of the shop. When Izuku stepped inside, he saw a large desk with computers, desktop calendars, and ledgers. A few lining with cabinets and artwork lined the walls of the office. "Sit down." Izuku sat down in a chair opposite of the owner. "This will be your interview." "Okay." Izuku did not expect to have an interview right away. The sudden caused his heart to rate to a skyrocket and his palms to sweat. He was never good with authority figures. The owner sat in her own chair, then took Izuku's application and shredded it. Izuku was stunned. "What makes you think you could do this job?" "I'm a hard worker, and I'm good with people." The janitor answered any question like that. The woman gave a non-contented hum. She'd been typing out a computer. "It says here your quirk list." "That's right," Izuku said, face blank. "I noticed you didn't disclose it on your application." "I didn't feel like it was relevant to the position." "Regardless, all quirks or lack thereof must be disclosed in the event of it becomes a liability down the line. By not having a quirk, it's impossible for it to become a liability," Izuku countered. "I would end up going out of business because of you." Izuku had nothing to say to that. He was beginning to think, not for the first time since he stepped foot into the cafe, that this was a bad idea. Maybe he should look for a job elsewhere. The owner bent down to look under the desk. She sighed in resignation at the sight of Izuku's red shoes. "Fine, you're hired. On probation. The job should be easy enough that even someone like you should be able to handle it. Your probation period will be 30 days. If you miss a day of work, breaking anything, or cause me to lose business in any way, you will be fired immediately. That means you must stay behind the counter. No one can see your shoes. You will just meet my boss, and you don't need to know anything more than that." Izuku was stunned. That was not the direction he figured this conversation was going. It wasn't the best conditions, but he would have to deal with it. He smiled stiffly. Yes, ma'am." She glared at him. "Boss?" She nodded once. "You will start tomorrow after school. Even though the alley is in the back, no one can see those shoes of yours," the boss said with her nose scrunching up inside disgust. Izuku retraced his footsteps and left the office after giving the boss copies of his legal documents. The young lady looked at asked Izuku as he left the kitchen. So you got the job? Oh yeah, Izuku said, a little unsure. So you experienced her warm welcome. I guess you could say that. Well, welcome aboard. I'm Jiro Kyoko. She held out her hand. Izuku reluctantly placed his hand in hers and shook it. Midoriya Izuku, I look forward to working with you. Izuku returned to the apartment he shared with Inko. She sat on the couch in the living room reading a book. Izuku couldn't see the covers from what he was standing, but he would have to bet it was a science fiction novel. Or one thing Izuku reluctantly admitted he got from her was his taste in books. I got a job today, she told her. He told her. Okay, make sure you're not causing any trouble. I won't, he said, then retreated to his room. He needed to do some homework, not his school homework. No, he always does that do that at school and then right away. The materials is always stuff he learned years ago, so it only takes him a few minutes to complete. Not that it mattered in the end. The school in general had an unwritten policy when it came to quirkless students. Every test, every quiz, every assignment was given a 70%, a perfect average score. Because quirkless kids couldn't get a higher score than that, they were smart enough. The school figured it was a win-win for them. The second his work came across their desk, they didn't have to waste a second to grade it. Just slap the 70 on it and then go on to the next. It saved their teacher's time grading, giving the quirkless kid a good grade, and preventing the school from sending bad scores to the Department of Education. Ever since Izuku discovered this occurrence, he was in elementary school. He taught himself in his free time. He should probably already know at least half of the school's curriculum by now, but he was taking this time after all. Digging a little deeper into each saga than will probably be taught by teachers. He'd like to be able to see the whole picture. Izuku laid his hand at some advanced calculus, but it didn't keep his attention. All he could think of was his job. About how we had told Inko he got it, but he didn't tell her he was only working Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. How he bought a membership to a gym with a little extra yen he had hidden in a loose floorboard of his closet. He'll be able to go there on Tuesdays, was probably looking for self-defense or martial arts courses on Thursdays. Sundays will be spent learning police procedures, first aid, public regulations, and making menu plans. He would also learn any subject he could think of. Izuku decided to put aside his home schoolwork for now and started to make his week's menu. He needed to make sure to include plenty of proteins, carbohydrates, and to include excess fats, oils, and simple sugars. He took the menu out the living room and gave it to Inko. Here's this week's menu. The portion size will be normal at first, but I expect them to be larger as I increase activity. Once that happens, I'll give you money for the extra food. Inko looked over the menu in her hand and nodded. Okay, I will follow this. And who knows, if it may even help me lose a few extra kilograms. Learning to eat healthier should be good, even if you're giving them that Philly crime-fighting thing. Izuku nodded and forced a closed-mouth smile. It wasn't worth arguing with her. This was just some phase. This was the career he was making. I believe we have to agree to make this first one tonight, but I will go to the store tomorrow for the rest. Come help me with supper. I don't think we have made some of these items lately. We'll need to make sure that you remember how to cook it so you can do it on your own. If I have to go with coworkers or something one night. Izuku sighed quietly and followed her into the kitchen. He knew what that meant. He would be the one cooking and she would stand behind him, critically every little thing he made in the kitchen. Izuku loathed the fact that he had to rely on Inko for funds. If he had enough of his own shopping, he wouldn't wait until he could live on his own. He had a feeling it would be a while before that could happen. Izuku didn't let him leave until at least he packed back whatever debts she thought he had. After Izuku finished cooking and the two of them ate, he went into his room. For the rest of the night, Researchers on how low impact exercises to do during the school day. He had to be physically go to school, but since he never really learned anything, it was just a waste of time. He wanted to get something out of it and having to go there. Yoga was his new task. He figured it would be a good way to set flexibility while gaining muscles. For the rest of the night, Izuku practiced the yoga postures to make sure that he had a baseline for what he could do and what he couldn't. He documented everything in his crime-fighting notebook and found the yoga soothing. Research into yoga led him to meditating. Izuku was a little skeptical about it, but he tried it. He didn't realize how tense he was or how much he ran through his mind. Even when he wasn't actively thinking, he had never been more relaxed. Izuku took that feeling with him as he fell into a dreamless sleep. Someone Like You, Chapter 4. Something must have been in the air when Izuku returned to school the next day. He always felt alone, for the most part. Really, the most that happened was the other students purposely bumping into him. Izuku was usually able to keep hold of his books, but there's a few times where they were forced out of his hands. That was usually followed by the textbooks being kicked further down the hallway in the course. This resulted in him spending more time finding and picking up his materials and making him slightly late for class. The teachers would either ignore him or scowl at him. They really did much else, claiming that it was too much of their valuable time to care about if Deku was there or not. After one of these particular classes, Izuku asked to hang back after class. He walked up to the teacher's desk and stood quietly, waited for them to acknowledge his existence. His particular teacher was not known for holding a particular petty grudge against Izuku. This stemmed from his actually grading his work a few times. He couldn't believe that Izuku got all answers correct and spent nearly a month trying to figure out how Izuku was cheating. Needless to say, he was never able to find anything. That didn't stop the teacher from trying to trip him up occasionally, but by giving him work well behind what the rest of the class was learning or giving Izuku guidelines for far more strict than his classmates were assigned. When then realizing that nothing was going to get the results they were looking for, they took to wasting Izuku's time and punished him for the slightest imagined infraction indeed. If Izuku spoke or moved while wanting to be acknowledged, he was getting distracting. He had gotten so many detentions over the years, so this whole song and dance of standing perfectly still away from them to finish grading papers they were working on was nothing new. In fact, Izuku thought maybe this would be a good time to work on his meditation. He couldn't move or do anything else anyway, so he might as well get some benefit out of just having to stand here. After about half an hour, the teacher finally put away the last of his paperwork and looked at Izuku. The sudden change of movement pulled Izuku back from the pre-state of enlightenment, or at least that was what it felt like. And when your bread is constantly fuzzy, even when you aren't trying to feel anything about it, always having it clear down near feels like finding God. The only thing that was incredibly difficult for Izuku was to actually shut it off his brain. He had only been able to achieve a total of one time, and he was already addicted. He was going to find a way to look up other meditation methods. Maybe the ones he'd been using was wrong for him in one way or another. So I saw you turn in a new post-graduation form, the teacher said, his fingers crossed and sitting on the desk in front of him. That's right, Izuku replied. The teacher hummed. I guess you finally realize there's no way someone like you is going to be a hero. I'm glad you're being more realistic. Maybe we should give you a medal to who finally given the beating into your dick's doll. He gave a mocking smile. Oh god, I can't pronounce anything right. Izuku didn't say anything in response. Nothing he said was gonna take serious anyway. He wouldn't just be punished or for saying something in his defense. He had no choice but to stand there and take whatever spewed from his teacher's mouth. Every word cracked against Izuku's defenses. Normally, anything that would just slide off his back never bothered him much, but Suppose that happened. What you heard is it so often, but today, after what Izuku had learned, he wanted to fight back. To put the people in this school in their place. He bit the inside of his lip to stay quiet. If he said anything, made a single sound, he'd be put into detention for the rest of his time in this god-forsaken school. He would end up being fired from his job. Izuku would guarantee that he would put on house arrest. There would be absolutely no way he'd be able to become a firefighter anytime soon, and Izuku couldn't wait. If he waited any longer, he would even farther behind people his age. He had a timeline to keep, so he stood there, silently listening as the teacher tried tearing down Izuku's shield bit by bit. By the time Izuku finally allowed to leave, he felt cuts inside his mouth. The metallic tang of blood filled his mouth and coated his teeth. He left the school, spitting a cloud of blood on the ground. He would find some water and wash his mouth as best as he could before having to go to work. He was positive that greeting country with a bloody smile would get him kicked out instantly. Movement out the corner of his eye put Izuku on alert. He lifted his head to side and was at least immediately on guard. Furious red eyes framed by the spiky blonde hair met his. He should have been surprised. He shouldn't have been surprised that Katsuki Bakugo had been waiting for him, but he wasn't. They had grown up together. Izuku had even called him Kachan at one point, but not anymore. Not ever since they were 4 and Bakugo had decided that Izuku made a better punching bag than a friend. Even now, the sight of Bakugo set Izuku's fight or flight response soaring. His heart rate and respiratory dramatically increased. Intended to provide his body with more oxygen to make his escape. "You're giving up? That's it? You're done?" Bakugo yelled. Izuku's muscles tensed up. Preparing to bolt, running didn't always work, but it was the only option Izuku had today. "What? Why do you care?" Izuku stuttered. "It's not like you wanted me to go to UA anyway. I changed it because I was afraid you would kill me if I showed up." Not exactly a lie. Izuku was positive that if Bakugo saw him at the entrance to them, he would attempt to kill him, and Izuku was not 100% sure that anyone there could stop him. But Izuku was not going to antagonize Bakugo by telling him Izuku had other options. Izuku crouched down with his hands out and his palms out, sparks and pops dumping from his hand, the memory of those hands burning their way in front of his mind. He flinched back. "You're damn right I would, Deku." Bakugo screamed. "I don't understand," he said clearly, void of any stutter. "Why are you okay with this?" Izuku couldn't stop his mouth even if he tried. His shields were breaking. He had enough of being treated like this. He just wanted to defend himself for once. To talk back, and so he did. "I'm quirkless. I can't be a villain. That makes me a villain, and you call yourself a hero." Izuku's voice rose with each syllable until finally he was screaming. I'm afraid of you. Genuinely afraid that you will kill me for doing anything more than going to school." Tears were frustratingly pooled and Izuku's eyes are pouring down his cheek. What kind of hero has civilians scared of them? Civilians aren't even scared of Endeavor, the hero with the most civilian casualties. Because they know that he doesn't go after them on purpose. He's just neglectful. But you were perfectly stalk and murder a civilian just because they were trying to get a better education, a better life, because they wanted to help people. Izuku's voice rose close up. He was coughing, trying to clear it. He couldn't remember the last time he screamed like that. Maybe he had, if the pain in the stroke was anything to go by. Bakugo stood there, no longer crouched, and his head lying still and silent at the side. His eyes were wide, his mouth slightly hanging open. Izuku took his silence as an opportunity to flee. He didn't want to be around Bakugo for any longer than absurdly necessary. Izuku ran to the cafe. When he got to the block, he ducked inside the alley behind the cafe, hands on his knees, breathing heavy, and he checked the time on his phone. Between teachers holding him back and interaction with Bakugo, he decided the walk would definitely be late, so as it stood, he had 5 minutes before his shift was scheduled to start. He would definitely have enough time to clean up. He entered the back door to the cafeteria and went to the employee restroom next door to the office. He looked in the mirror above the sink. He looked horrible. He was sweaty, had flaked of blood decorating his lips. First things first, Izuku turned to the sink and used his hands to pull some water. He searched around his paws and swished it in his mouth and spit it out. He did this until water came out clear. Then he quickly turned off his school jacket and white shirt, then redressed using a white shirt that he kept in his bag. His uniform had been dirtied, or more than once. If his uniform wasn't spotless, it was attention for him. So he had taken to carry 1 or 2 shirts around with him. Once redressing, Izuku deemed himself presentable at least and left the bathroom. "So it looks like you showed up," the boss said, looking at her watch. "And just in time, too. Looks like you gotta stick around after all." The boss walked over to the hooks next to the back door and pulled a white apron off the hook. "You can hang your bag up here. Put this apron on the head to the front." Izuku followed her instructions and walked to the front of the cafe. Once there, Boss quickly showed Izuku how to run the register and where supplies are located. "Remember, you are not to go out front. You have to stay behind the counter. If I see you take one step, you are done. Gone." Izuku nodded. Boss gave him a suspicious glare and left for the kitchen. Izuku had smelled the sweetness coming from the kitchen. He assumed it was from the pastries from the other school crowd. He had seen groups of friends going to the small restaurant or cafe just like this after school, but never actually had part of this custom. Jiro was working again that day. Izuku saw her take a glance at his shoes, recognition in her eyes. Izuku went onto the defense, ready to take whatever he was going to be throwing at him. "So, do you want to learn how to make a drink?" she asked. Izuku nearly stumbled in shock. He knows that she knows he's quirkless, but he didn't know why she wasn't saying anything. Jiro continued speaking in his silence. "We are allowed 1 free drink per shift. I haven't made mine yet, so if you want, you can make both of ours and learn how to use the machines." "Yeah, that sounds good," Izuku said slowly. Walking to the machine, Jiro showed him how to grind the beans, measure out the grounds, and where the cafe's recipe book was. After shifting to the recipes, Izuku decided that he wanted a caramel macchiato. He wasn't offering Guinness sweets, and even though he was supposed to be eating healthier, he decided it wasn't gonna be enough to throw him off of his diet, especially if he only made himself a small serving. Jules chose an Americano for that day. She mentioned that she would prefer skews that are a little more bitter, and Izuku scrunched his nose. "Why have you said anything about my shoes yet?" Izuku asked quietly, following the direction in the recipe book. He went back and forth from the machine a few times, making sure he hadn't forgotten anything. "What's there to say? You're quirkless. That's all there is to it," she replied. Izuku didn't understand. No one ever just ignored his quirklessness. What exactly was Jiro doing? Izuku didn't like her answer. He didn't understand it. He didn't trust it. Jiro must have seen the doubt in Izuku's features because she explained further. "My father is quirkless." Izuku whipped his head around to her, nearly spilling his coffee. "What?" he asked quietly in his sleeve. "My father is quirkless. He composes music for a living. My mom is a musician, so they work together. My father writes and my mother sings. They have become pretty popular and have a decent living doing what they love." Jiro smiled at Izuku. "They're the ones who told me that quirkless people can do anything they put their minds to." Izuku teared up for the second time that day. He rubbed his eyes against the fabric on his shoulder, trying to dry his eyes. After a little sniffle and a deep breath, he composed himself, smiled back at her. "Thank you," he said sincerely. Izuku finished his drink just in time for the next gold rush to start. He smiled at his first customer, ready to take his first step towards his dream. So that's the end of chapter 4 of Someone Like You. Hope you had a good time listening to this. Bye bye.